Activate Your Introvert, the weekly show to help leaders build performance by understanding introversion. In this week's show, a discussion with Mark Lee. Mark is a recovering accountant who now devotes his time to helping other accountants be more successful in practice. He also runs a website for specialist tax advisors and anybody wanting specialist tax advice. More importantly, to me at least, Mark was one of the first people I interviewed on the show over 2 years ago. Yep, it's been that long, and I forgot to celebrate the show's second birthday. Mark's episode was, for a very long time, one of the most popular episodes, and he's a great guy to chat to, with lots of business performance ideas worth listening to. Question of the week: workplace bullying. Are introverts or extroverts more likely to be bullies? Sports bras, trends, and motivation at work. What question would you like answered about introversion? Visit activateyourintrovert.co.uk and let me know. I'll answer your question on the show and invite you onto the show as well if you want to be. Just before speaking to Mark, in The Week, an article stating that Timpsons are among a growing number of companies hiring chief happiness officers. It's a commercial no-brainer, said Janet Layton. If people feel supported and cared for, they are calm, relaxed and hard-working. And in one sense it makes absolute sense. I was wondering though if it marks something new, or the start of a new trend from HR back towards being welfare officers. I could of course simply relate it all to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If our staff feel secure, then belonging becomes the next motivator. If they belong, then esteem becomes the next motivator. If you think you have some introverts who don't feel they belong, what's the next step for their motivation? No amount of esteem is going to do it, according to Maslow, but helping them to belong is important. How do you think about staff motivation, or do you just try to be nice? If more firms think about staff motivation, does that make it more important to you too? An article in The Guardian caught my eye. Are white Christians under attack in America? No, but the myth is winning. The idea that the American way of life is under threat from a variety of others is overblown, but believed by many, according to The Guardian. It refers to a poll in which respondents believe that 30% of Americans are Jewish, 27% Muslim, 21% transgender, and 20% earn more than $1 million a year. In reality, each of those groups account for less than 2% of the population. But another group of the population appear to be keen on helping people believe they're under attack. Now, I'm not adding anything more to the article, but it did make me wonder about very vocal people on your teams versus less vocal ones, and how easy it is to only listen to the noise and not everybody, and how that will affect introverts and quieter people more than others. And finally, you were waiting for this one, I know, a sports bra caught my eye. Well, not literally. Apparently, sports bras have now become so common they're being included in the retail price index. Yes, that was in the news this week. The sports bra revolution has seen a piece of gym kit find its way onto the list of consumer items used to measure inflation as they're part of daily life. It left me thinking about how trends are sometimes obvious and sometimes just sneak up on us until they become part of daily life. The flexibility that many people have become accustomed to in the last couple of years when they think about work is perhaps one of them, and the way people have become more used to working on their own might be another. Both are important right now to many businesses as people start to spend more time in the office, or maybe not, as quite a few business owners have been talking to me nowadays about this move back to the office and greater flexibility, slightly more home working. I think this could be a very good time to chat to Mark. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, John. Good to be back.
You were either the first or the second person I ever interviewed, and that was, well, it was over 2 years ago now, wasn't it?
It was 2019.
Lovely to have you back. Yours was one of the most successful episodes for about 11, 12, 13 months.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good. No, thank you.
You shared really good content, obviously. So I'm really pleased to welcome you back. Before we get into the thing about how you help people grow their practice and the relevance of that for introversion, extroversion, etc. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
When I was younger, there is no doubt I was definitely more extrovert than introvert. I was exceptionally extroverted. I feel as I've grown older that I've become somewhat more introverted. I've learned to shut up and listen more. That's been an ongoing challenge for many years. And B, I found that I have less desire to be as active as I used to be, as extrovert as I used to be.
I've spoken to other people who have said similar. It's 2 years ago last week when the pandemic hit us in the UK and we were into lockdown. How do you think business life has changed? Because obviously we had the big thing going into it and everyone's panicking and thinking it was only going to be a few weeks, if I remember rightly. And then everyone was talking about the new normal. And then for about a year, we're getting back to an old normal. So I'm not really sure what's going on.
Sadly, and this doesn't win me any friends, but just before the pandemic hit, I had decided to focus all my energies on being a professional speaker as distinct from my other activities. When all the bookings disappeared from my diary and I focused more on the Tax Advice Network website and on online mentoring and one-to-one mentoring, I was saying to people, it'll be at least 2 years before I'm back on stage. And subject to one gig I did last October during one of the breaks, it will be a little over 2 years. And I've just got used to it. And I've convinced myself and satisfied myself that the benefits of speaking on webinars and podcasts from home vastly outweigh the disadvantages that I first focused on. And I suspect that after a short hiatus, when everybody will be desperate to get back face to face, I suspect there will be fewer face-to-face or in real life events and more webinars around the country and across organisations generally in 2023 than there were in 2019, because the logistical benefits, the time saving and practicalities around it all.
Do you think that delegates get as much from webinar or a remote speaker as they do face-to-face?
I think that there are enormous benefits for attendees in being at an event live and getting the opportunity to network and mix with colleagues or other attendees. Not everybody, of course, values that opportunity. Some people are very shy of it. Some people steer away from attending events because they don't want to be forced to have to do that. Because we know the longer you're in business, whether you're running your own business or you're an employee, the more you need to be able to mix effectively and converse effectively with other people. It's a good opportunity in a non-threatening environment to do it. Nevertheless, I could imagine there are lots of people who will relish the opportunity to stay at home, maybe watch on catch-up, time shift their attendance. And you're right, unless they make notes and interact, they won't get as much from it, but it may still be more attractive to them and indeed to employers not to have to pay for everybody to leave their normal place of work and go to a central venue for events.
I might not get out as much out of one event as a delegate, but I can attend 2 or 3 in the time that I might have had to go to one.
Absolutely.
We're talking about delegates and audiences, and one of the conversations we were having off air before we started was the way that different types of audiences react.
Yes. Yeah, well, as you know, my primary target audience are accountants. I used to be an accountant, and I've been lecturing and speaking to accountants for well over 20 years. I like to think of myself, and people tell me I'm an entertaining speaker, inspiring, motivating. And one of the challenges that I faced over the years was trying to ensure that that entertainment translated into smiles or even laughter amongst the audiences. I used to come home from talks and my wife would say, how'd it go? And I'd say, well, it went really well, except they didn't laugh as much as I would have hoped they would. And my wife, who's known me and known many accountants for a long time, pointed out, yes, Mark, she said, but they're accountants. And it made me think and realise that, obviously, I'm not into stereotyping accountants, but I would accept that many accountants are more analytical, possibly even more introverted than entrepreneurs, business people generally. And when they're concentrating, they are less likely to laugh or smile loudly than non-accountants in the main. It's not across the board. And so I got used to and accept the fact that an audience might be enjoying the talk, even if it's not showing on their faces. And certainly feedback afterwards generally confirms that that is the case.
I would certainly agree. And I've spoken to many people who think that the audience isn't responding. They're responding in their own quiet way. They're concentrating, which is, I think you're right about the stereotype thing. Stereotypes are wonderful, aren't they? We can say, yes, well, accountants, they're introverts. Well, they might be a stereotypical accountant, but that doesn't mean all accountants and all tax advisors are introverted.
100%.
I know several, including yourself, several extroverted accountants. You help many people to become more successful, and particularly I know you do a lot with LinkedIn and social media. What would you say your biggest message would be to help people?
I think the key thing is to be more discerning when you hear and see generic advice about what to do from a marketing perspective, networking perspective, or social media. You need to choose the techniques and solutions that you're comfortable with and that are appropriate for your target audience. If you've got clarity as regards the type of people you want to influence, then ensure that the advice you're following is relevant for those people. I run a monthly LinkedIn masterclass exclusively for accountants and bookkeepers, where I share advice that is specifically relevant to them, as distinct from the generic advice that requires them to do more than they're comfortable with and almost puts them off doing stuff. And I have to put my hands up and say, I follow a lot of that generic advice in myself because it suits me and the way I'm looking to engage with people. But it's not appropriate. And there are a lot easier ways to achieve your objectives than all the generic stuff if your audience is clearly identifiable.
So you've got to consider your audience and I guess consider your own personality as well.
Yeah.
Because there'd be no good in somebody that's, I don't know, perhaps a very, very quiet kind of person going out and pretending to be very loud.
Absolutely right.
So yeah, be much more discerning on LinkedIn and other social media.
Yeah.
And what else do you think people could do to be more successful in practice?
Well, obviously it depends on what it is you're looking to achieve. So the biggest issue is often lead generation and finding new clients and new business. And a mistake that we've all made it, I'm sure you've done it, John, I certainly have, is we think we can help lots of different types of people, which means we are promoting ourselves as being able to help anyone. Remember the old Martini adverts? Anytime, any place, anywhere.
I never saw it myself.
But if you've got a martini business where you think you can help anyone, anytime, anywhere, unfortunately, very few people are likely to engage or recognize that you're talking to them. Whereas if you're a bit more specific, if you identify a focus, I don't use the word niche because a lot of people don't like it, but if you can identify a marketing focus for a particular type of person with whom your messages will resonate, and you appear to be a specialist in dealing with those people, they are more likely to engage with you and want to use you as distinct from anybody else who isn't specifically focused on helping people like that.
Can I finish with a tip for an introvert to be more successful?
I've got a freebie on my website on 7 ways you can stand out from your competition, your peers, and the pack. And I would say one of the key opportunities for an introvert to stand out is by having standout conversations, focusing on their conversational style, because of course, as we know, you have better conversations if you listen more than you speak. And introverts are more likely to want to listen more than they speak, to ask good questions.
And how about spinning that the other way round? Perhaps I'm an extrovert and perhaps I've even got introverts working for me. How can I be more successful?
There I'd go from the standing out in terms of your appearance and also your personal and potentially business branding as well. So there, in fact, we've had the A, appearance, B, business branding, C, conversations. It's the first 3 of the 7 ways in which you can stand
very
out.
Clever. I see what you did there. Mark, it's been brilliant to catch up.
You as
and
well.
Some people are going to want to get back in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do that? I guess you've got a great website about tax advice.
If it's tax advice you're after, then go to findataxadvisor.online. You won't find me there. I don't give tax advice, but that's a great way to resource specialist tax advice. In terms of me personally, LinkedIn, I'm Bookmark Lee. In fact, my website is Bookmark Lee, BOOKMARKLEE, because my name is so common. There's over 1,400 Mark Lees on LinkedIn in the UK alone.
I love the fact that you played on not just Bookmark, but also Book Mark.
Yes, the NLP experts, which NLP I learned yesterday stands for nothing like psychology. They will tell us that there's an embedded command to Bookmark Lee.
Absolutely.
I can tell you it hasn't worked to date, but it might yet do.
Mark, it's been fantastic to catch up. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you, John.
Well, wasn't that brilliant? Thank you, Mark. I liked the piece about stereotyping and the dangers, and how some people don't show enjoyment, particularly perhaps accountants, introverts, ? Doesn't mean that they're not enjoying and they're not engaging. They're engaging in a different way. I think the piece about delegates, online and offline, was really good. Use your personality, not generic advice, and getting clarity on the people that you want to influence the most. What would you like to know about introversion in business? This week's question comes from Peter. Peter and I were having a conversation about workplace bullying, having both read the same article about John Bercow, the ex-speaker in the House of Commons. It led to Peter asking, are bullies more likely to be extroverted? My initial thought was extroversion and introversion are not related to workplace bullying. But then I thought, what is bullying? The Anti-Bullying Alliance says it's the repetitive, intentional hurting of one person or group by another person or group, where the relationship involves an imbalance of power, and it can happen on face-to-face or online. The imbalance of power is an interesting one in there, especially as my conversation with Peter started off talking about workplaces. In the workplace, bullying could involve constant criticism, removal of duties without reason, threats, aggression and shouting, being excluded and ignored. Interesting. Misusing a position of power to belittle, demean or intimidate. Refusing reasonable requests. Blocking promotion, progress or training opportunities. All of which can be a big problem for productivity at work. But I might be digressing a bit. But the key point in everything in there, I still see nothing that says introvert or extrovert. Larissa Barber of the Northern Illinois University surveyed 515 people and found that people higher in extroversion tend to report less interpersonal conflict at work, including even getting into arguments or contributing to those conflicts. Although, as she said, introvert-extrovert was weaker than traits such as agreeableness and conscientious and honesty versus humility. So maybe extroverts notice conflict less, but that doesn't mean they're more likely to be bullies. After lots more discussion and reading, I decided that bullying is no more or less likely to be done by an introvert or an extrovert. Maybe they just bully in different ways.
I'm John Baker. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. There's a new episode every Thursday at activateyourintroversion.co.uk and your favourite podcast provider. Till then, go be introversial, activating your introverts building your business.